It's 11 o'clock. We're going to get started. I know a few people are still coming into the webinar, but I want to say thank you very much for being here this morning. I want to introduce myself, and then I'll let Ron introduce himself. My name is Beth Yarzab, and I'm part of the certification team at CanFitPro Home Office. I'm also a pro trainer for the Fitness Instructor Specialist program, and I have been delighted to be a pro trainer for 10 years now. I have been certified FIS for 20 years, and I've been teaching in and around the GTA for that many years. And I have to say, I just love teaching FIS, the program. I love teaching group fitness. Those of you who are on the call who've been in my classes or been in my courses know I have a deep passion for group fitness, for fitness in general, and I'm just delighted to be sharing all the top tips that you need to help you be successful in your practical exam for the Fitness Instructor Specialist program. And I will pass it over to Ron to introduce himself.
Hello. So again, my name is Ron. I'm also a pro trainer for the Fitness Instructor Specialist, the FIS program. I've been a pro trainer for over 10 years, I think 11 years now. And I've been teaching group exercise for almost 28 years. So yes, I've been around the block a couple times. A quick shout out to my FIS peeps who I know you're in the middle of transition. Here in Edmonton, it's a little cloudy, but I've been in the Edmonton area now again for that long. And again, loving the program. So I'm glad you guys can make it with us.
Awesome. So just a few points as we get into the topic today. Just a reminder that all courses and exams that were scheduled prior to May 17th have been canceled. Obviously, we are in a period of uncertainty with COVID-19. Overall, your safety is CanFitPro's top priority. Your certification is also our top priority. So please be advised that there's nothing that you need to do. If you had a practical exam scheduled already, then there's nothing that you need to do to cancel it if it was prior to May 17th. The CanFitPro home office is just going to take care of that for you, and you don't have to do anything to cancel it. When it's time to reschedule, when it's safe to reschedule, CanFitPro will contact you, and then you'll be able to see and work with your pro trainer to schedule a practical exam that works for your timelines, for your schedule. There's absolutely no charge to reschedule due to these COVID-19 cancellations. So we have a huge CanFitPro safety net wrapped around your certification. Not to worry, we are going to take care of you during this unprecedented time of uncertainty, but we're glad you're here because you now have perhaps a little extra time to help you prepare for your practical exam. So you watching this webinar today is only going to do you great service in preparing for a very successful practical exam. And a reminder that if you are wondering what's going on with your exam, with rescheduling, you can always go to canfitpro.com, and right on the homepage, we have excellent COVID-19 FAQs, and those are updated regularly. So please go check there first. That's probably where your answer is going to be. And just about today, our session will probably run just about an hour, and you can ask questions in the chat. So in Zoom, you'll see that there's a chat function. We have the amazing Barb here, who's our chat moderator. She's from our certification team as well at CanFitPro. So she's going to be able to answer questions live in the chat as they happen. I would recommend that you pose your question to all panelists and attendees, because it's very likely that a question you have is the question of somebody else on the call. So why don't we all collaborate and learn together? If you could please pose your question to all attendees and panelists, that would be fantastic. Of course, if you prefer to stay private, you can simply refer your question to all panelists in that chat, and then the attendees won't see that. So that's just a kind of FYI there. Also, only Ron and I are on video. There's no one else from the attendees on video, so don't worry, you could still be in your jammies and everything is fine. We can't see you. So that's just an FYI about how the webinar actually works. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Ron now to talk a little bit about what happens when you pass your theory exam and the exam package you're going to get to help you prepare for your practical?
So the first thing I want to say is, congratulations, you passed your theory. That was probably the hardest, the most stressful components you had. So coming to this part, that means you've reached over the hump. You're now on the home stretch. So when it comes to the practical components, your pro trainer is going to send you a couple things. They're going to send you the instructions, the evaluation form, which is actually the evaluation form that us pro trainers use to mark you. And then the lesson plan templates that was probably discussed, during the live courses. So there's a lot of little things that we always want to make sure that you're kind of prepared for. So that's what the exam instructions are. It kind of gives you a lay of the land of what to do and what's coming up. So for example, making sure your lesson plans are completed. Bring a copy of your CPR with you to the practical exam, because we're hoping by this point you have completed your CPR. We highly recommend it. That way, when you show us your CPR, we can submit all that at the same time. Because like we mentioned before, if unfortunately you haven't yet had the CPR class, or maybe you're waiting for it, whatever it may be, it's up to you then to submit it to canfitpro. So if you can get it done before this component, before you do your practical, we can submit everything all at the same time, and then you're done. Makes it a little easier on you. That way you're not panicking trying to get that into canfitpro. Remember, the same as the theory is that you do need 80% to successfully be certified. So keeping that in mind, and that's also why we send you the evaluation form. So the evaluation form breaks down the different components. It goes into a little more detail of what we're looking for. So during the session itself, we kind of looking at it at 60% is your actual bulk of it. So your warm up, your cardio, your strength conditioning, these kind of things were 60% of your mark. 40% of your mark, we're looking at starting the class effectively. Your leadership abilities, your teaching ability. So for example, facing the group, right? You want to make sure you're always facing the group. You're mirror imaging them. It takes a lot of practice, lots of practice. Trust me, it gets very confusing very quickly. But once you also get it, you got it. I always make the joke that I'm a lousy navigator now in a vehicle, because my right is your left and your left is my right. So when I say turn right, is it your left or right? I don't know anymore. I just point a lot when I'm driving. But in class, we like to see that. We like to see you mirror, because a lot of that energy comes from it. Your teaching ability, finishing the class, saying you're here at the end of the class for any questions, any feedback, letting them know some events that are going on in the club. So little things like this is a big component of it. So that's also why we send you the evaluation form in advance. And you'll receive that in a couple different ways. Most of the time what happens is after you write your theory exam, like I do it myself, and I know some of the pro trainers do it, we send you the package right away. You can also get the package when you book your practical. So maybe you want that time just to kind of chill. You talk to the pro trainer that's going to be doing your practical, and most of the time, I think it's 95, 98% of the time, the pro trainer does your theory, they do your practical anyway. So you're always in communication with that. But you'll receive that package again, typically after you pass it, or again from your pro trainer that you're booking with. Have a look at it. So go through, take the time to see what it is we're expecting. Now, we would have covered that in the live exam and the live course, but now it's the nitty gritty component. Again, in the cardio, the 3 phases of the cardio. Now, a lot of times we get a little hung up on I need to talk about 3 phases of the cardio and it's for this long, and you get so caught up in the specifics that you forget the whys. So why is the 3 phases of the cardio so important? How do we explain that to people that really, if they're coming to your class, do they really care that they're in, the cardio warm up or the cardio cool? You need to, again, understand the whys, and then you can incorporate that into the exam so we can hear it. Now, also during the exam, I tend to do probably most of it sitting back and observing as a pro trainer. I jump in and I'll do some of the components also to see how it feels. As I'm doing the exercise, I'm listening to your coach cue and correcting. So we kind of jump back and forth as what I do. How about you, Beth?
Yes, I do the same thing. I have my clipboard. I'll probably be trying to stand in a place that is a little off to the side and perhaps at the back, because I want to make sure I can hear your cueing and coaching if you're not using a mic, for example. And I will be taking notes, and I'll be jumping in and actually trying your exercises, because I want to be able to help you at the end. Something that a lot of my students struggle with initially is those transitions, and transitioning from one movement to the other in a way that's very smooth. So if I can provide a little bit of support at the end when I'm doing some comments and feedback to the student, then I will have to have tried that movement to maybe give suggestions of something else that they might have wanted to put in there to transition that movement better. So, I mean, Ron probably knows too, there's just some moves that they just don't seem to work together when you try to flow them if you're using musicality. So, or even if you're not using musicality, there's just some movements where you're like, I thought I was on, I was up, I was down, I'm right, I'm left, I don't know where I am. And so when that happens, if you're doing your exam and you're feeling what worked really well when you're practicing isn't working on the studio floor, you have to plow through, because that's absolutely going to happen to you as a fitness instructor once you're certified and working. We prepare our classes all the time, and then our best intentions sometimes don't work out the way we thought they were going to, the way we had prepared and planned. So you need to have that confidence to keep plowing through, take it to a march if you need to, or take it to a step touch, one of your base moves, so that you can regroup, find that confidence from within, and then just keep moving forward with your program. What do you think, Ron?
And I also agree. And I always like to reiterate that I'm not looking for perfection. I'm not looking for that video quality of a class. I'm looking for, what did you learn in your live course? What is the information that's important that we need to communicate to our participants? Why are we doing the class? Why are we doing these push-ups? What's the importance of it? I've had some, some situations where for some reason on the studio floor, it isn't working. And I would say, as long as you keep moving and keep them going, I'm happy. The warm-up, what is the purpose of the warm-up? Can you get them to do that with some safety, some regressions and some progressions, things like this, taking care of your members? If you can demonstrate that and show us, it may not be the perfect grapevine or the perfect, movement pattern, that's okay. Again, we're not looking for perfection. We're looking, can you apply what you've learned?
Yeah, very awesome, very true. So let's jump into how to create your class program. So hopefully, if you've been at the live course, you've already started this process. I know when my students come through my live course, by the end of it, they are teaching a small, short 20-minute workout either on their own or in a small group. And so they've already built out a very short warm-up, a very short cardio, muscle conditioning, and flexibility and cool down. So now you can expand those sections that you've already worked on and practiced in front of a live group from your course, and you can make that a lot longer for your own workout. So you can choose a 45-minute or 60-minute class, and you need to have your warm-up, and we're looking for general and specific movements. So general movements being your marching, step touch, your ham curls, your knee lifts, your adductors, glute squeeze or hip extensions, just those very basic movements. And then the specific warm-up movements need to attach to the class theme that you're teaching. So typically when I'm creating my own class for the classes I teach in my community here, I think about, what is the theme of my class? Is it going to be martial arts based? Is it a boot camp style? Is it dance style? Is it more traditional? So I go through and I decide what the theme is first. Then I can actually create that specific movement for the warm up. And then I'm actually creating the cardio that is very specific to that theme of class. So if I'm doing a martial arts inspired, you better believe I'm going to be doing bob and weave in my actual warm up. I'm going to be teaching how to do jabs, all the different punches, front jab, side cross, uppercut, hook. And I'm going to be talking about safety and technique and taking them through that gradual warm up. So they're not just fully extending and going hard, but they're gradually increasing the intensity. Anything to add there, Ron, about the warm-up?
So always making sure that, you know, I'm trying to choose my words. I'm trying to think of, to understand this. Again, sometimes my thoughts get a little muddled. I have a great idea and I'm trying to figure out how to say it. But a trick I'm gonna add into all it. So you're going into the cardio next, anyways, muscle conditioning. But what I found very helpful, especially when it comes to you're just starting out, I sit down, I spend all this time to create my warm up, both the general and specific. Now my cardio, I got to make sure that I'm hitting all the warm up, you know, everything in the warm up. And then muscle conditioning, did I? So what I found a little bit easier is if you build your class and then create the warm up afterwards. So don't start with the warm up, start with your bulk of the class, which is what Beth is going to go into in a few seconds here. But build that first and then look at it. Okay, if we're doing this cross jab, we're doing this uppercut, what type of warm up things do I have to do to make sure they're ready for it? And I found that so much easier to build classes. When I first started, I created the warm up first and then I tried to figure out, and I spent so much time trying to do that, that I found if I build the middle first and then build the warm up and then my flexibility after that also, it makes it easier to create that well-balanced program much more quicker. And it's like, oh, I can see all the elements now. I can see, I make sure I covered it all.
Excellent point, Ron. I also agree, and I typically suggest that my students do that too. Create the bulk of your class first, then associate the warm-up, the flexibility with that bulk of the warm-up or bulk of the class so that you've actually hit all your points. That's a very good tip. So take it from the trainer pro, Mr. Ron McPhee. All right, so let's talk about starting the class. So listen, on your marking rubric, you're going to see that you get quite a few marks just for starting the class. This is your first impression, my friends. You have an opportunity here to demonstrate your leadership abilities, demonstrate your passion to your students. And this is where you're really going to be probably the most fearful, the most anxious. Once you get through the warm up, you're really going to come into your own, but you have to get through this starting the class section of your class. And so a couple tips I have for you based on the 10 years I've been running practical exams. Plan your clothing. Okay, so this sounds like a really silly, simple thing. However, sometimes my students, they go and they purchase brand new fitness pants for their practical, and they haven't worked out in them before. But then what they find is the pants are falling down a little bit. Maybe they're not fitting exactly the way that they should. So that's distracting because now they're going to be hiking up their pants. So it sounds silly, but it's honestly something that you can do in advance to build your confidence, because you want to go in there just feeling like your clothing is appropriate, it's secure, it's not going anywhere, because you're in front of a group, so you have to look professional. Arrive early, that's just a given. That's just a fitness instructor best practice. Always arrive 10, 15 minutes early. You may even want to show up even earlier than that for your exam. Check in with your pro trainer. When are they going to meet you? When can you get into the facility? All of those things. But this is when you are going to play your music, make sure it works, always have a backup, bring a backup speaker, like do all the things you need to that you won't have to use, but they're there in case you need them. You're prepping the equipment, doing a quick scan of the floor. Is everything safe? Everything is in working order with your equipment. If it's a new facility to you, you're not familiar with it, it's going to take you a little extra time just to get familiar. Where are the mats? Where are the dumbbells? Where are the resistance tubing? So go through and make sure you have enough time, and then get there and just breathe. Remember that your breath is a tool that you can use anytime you need to when you are feeling anxious or worried and you're ramped up. So this is your breath. You want to tap into that deep breathing so that you can really center yourself and really start to visualize your success when you get into your class. The other key components at the beginning of the class is your introduction. Now, I've had students that bring their friends and family. So you remember you need 4 participants to at least to be in your exam class. So sometimes you bring your friends and family and they know you. So you forget to introduce yourself. Well, those are actually marks that you need, that you can get on your practical exam rubric. So I want to hear you say, hi, my name is Beth. Welcome to strength and sculpt and cardio class. And today we're going to be doing, a 10 to 12 minute warm up followed by 20 minutes of cardio with additional strength conditioning and flexibility at the end. I'm always going to reassure everyone that there's going to be lots of modifications and options given, that they can drink water anytime they need to, really making eye contact with people at that time, scan the room, smile, bring your heart-centered passion about fitness and what you're about to share to the people in the class, because they're going to feel that energy, and there's that energy exchange that happens right there. And that's going to build your confidence, because there is a component of class management that you need to handle. What if there's people who are chit-chatting on the side? That's going to be distracting. You need to kind of push that, get that sort of sorted out right at the beginning, so that people are able to engage and hear you, that there's not a group of people disrupting you as an instructor. And hopefully your pro trainer has talked about all these very many scenarios that happen in classes during your live course to help prepare you. And you've been going to classes, you see what can happen. So make sure you kind of prepare yourself mentally for any scenario that could come up, and get in there, start that class, own what you're about to do, because your participants are looking to you as a leader, and they're looking to you for confidence. So you got to just fake it even if you don't have it. Ron, anything to add here?
Everything you said is like driving it home, exactly what it is. I can't emphasize enough about having the room set up for when your participants come in. So having your station set up in the way that you want them to do it, because this also becomes a tripping hazard if not. So for example, I teach a step class at a community hall, and we get anywhere from 40 to 60 people, but we also do strength conditioning. So my station has to show what it is, where I want it, how I want it set up, so for safety. So yes, taking that time to be in there, having your backups. I have so many, my backups have backups now. And those backups have a possible backup, right? Some of my participants are my backup. They have things ready for me at any moment. And the last thing that I about starting the class is your music, your volume. I am very strong advocate about the volume. The volume of the music should be enough to motivate, to get people excited, to inspire, but not too much that it's over the decibels that we're looking for. So I always recommend to anyone who's taking an exam when they write with either practical or doing their practical is to download a decibels app. They're free. There's a lot of free ones because I use it when I do my exams, and I show them every room is different. A smaller room seems to echo a larger room. So you may think you know what the music level is good, but actually it's too loud or it's too soft. So my recommendation, big time, is download a free decibel app. Check out your space in advance. Again, talk to your pro trainer. Also about the whole musicality thing. For sound is what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Awesome idea. I learned something from Ron every single time we work together about the decibel app. In your manual, towards the back, there is a table that has the recommended decibels. So it's all there for you in your manual. But I love that idea about the decibel app.
Because over the years, I've been teaching for so long, unfortunately, my hearing has been starting to go. I don't know if it's just an age thing or if it's the music thing. I don't know.
Yeah, sometimes there's wear and tear on us instructors as we go through. So it's important to have the music at the right level and use a microphone. Okay, so I'm going to pass it to Ron to talk about the warm-up.
Okay, so in the warm-up, you're setting the stage for the class itself. You've done your introduction. We're giving them a lay of the land. Now you're getting the inspiration. Now you're getting through to get that body warm, to get them ready, to get them mentally prepared for it. So again, if you look at it, the class can be 45 to 60 minutes long for your exam. So confirm that with the pro trainer how long it's going to be or how long you want them to be. That way you can book the appropriate amount of time for your warm-up. So again, for the 60-minute class, we're looking at 10 to 12-ish minutes. Now, The challenge can be sometimes looking at the clock, you're looking at your watch, you're looking at how much longer do I have? Is the warm-up appropriate? The tip and trick I do for the warm-up is if you use the fitness-based music from any of the fitness music companies, 2 songs is perfect for a warm-up. So by the end of my second song, I know my warm-up should be coming to a completion. As you go through the warm-up, again, you want about 5 minutes doing a general warm-up, so just increasing the body. That would be the first song. The second song, I'm doing more specific movements, creating, getting them prepared for the workout, being specific in my movements. Watching them. As we go into the warm-up, what is their rate of perceived exertion, the RPE? And we kind of talk about that. We go through that in our live courses, but that's look at your participants. Where are they on that scale? Are they getting warm? Are they looking like they're getting warm? Are they starting to understand? The options and modifications is going to help you make sure that they get warm and they're getting into that appropriate RPE, rate of perceived exertion numbers. Now, the options and modifications, I incorporate that both for people who maybe have never done fitness before. This is their first class. What is a grapevine? What is a basic? What's a jab? I don't understand this. And you might get your people who come into for your exam, they may not know. Maybe it's just someone who said, yeah, I can come and give you a hand, no problem, but they've never been to the gym before. So you're teaching to a brand new participant who's excited to be in your class. So what are the options that you're going to offer them? What are the easier moves? What is going to be the more challenging moves? Because that can also set you up for the class itself. I always talk about the warm-up. These are all of our base moves. These are all the moves that you can always come back to if you find a move we're doing later a bit too challenging. You're starting to get exhausted. Remember the base moves we did in the warm-up. Remember what we did in the warm-up when we did this. So I really emphasize the warm-up can be those opportunities and then showing a little bit of increase or decrease intensity. Again, that's all in the movement rehearsal. So again, you're preparing them. So again, if I'm doing a step class, I'm not going to have them go onto the floor and do a Tabata warm-up. The warm-up should be mimicking a lot of the movements that you are going to do or prepare for in the class itself. So the warm-up is a critical component. This is the one that you're getting them ready. And by the end of the warm-up, you need to evaluate, did I reach that goal? Are they warm? Are they prepared to now start working the bulk of the class? Beth?
Everything you said is spot on. I would add, for the options and modifications, sometimes you may put together a warm-up has very basic movement patterns or very basic moves, and you don't know how to regress a very basic move. How can you give options and modifications in a warm-up, right? So there's different little tips, things you can say. For example, if you get lost at any point, feel free just to march it out. That's an option. If you feel like your heart rate is increasing too quickly and you're breathless, take out the arms and just do the lower body. That's an option. If you want to take it a little bit more, to bring it more intense, use your arms, really flex the muscles, bring them overhead, pull down strong. If you need something less intense, keep the arms at shoulder height or below. So just saying those different options and modifications will get you those marks. For me as your pro trainer, because I know it can be sometimes very difficult if your movements are very easy already. How do you give lower intensity options or even more basic than what you're already doing? So some of those coaching techniques can be used as those options and modifications. All right, we're going to move on to cardiorespiratory training. So in this phase, as Ron said, it's something that you might want to create before you even create the warm-up. So really looking at what is the theme of the class that you're going to teach, because you're going to have to introduce that. You're going to have to put moves that fit that theme. And we want to see, that again, gradual increase and decrease in intensity. You need to hit the 3 phases of cardio. And I want to feel the difference between pre-cardio, cardio, and cardio recovery. I also want you to, say, and I want to hear that we are moving from the warm-up to the pre-cardio phase. And I want you to explain why. You know, we want to go a little bit harder than the warm-up, just gradually increasing that intensity for a few more minutes before we go 100% all out. So just giving participants that opportunity to gradually increase the intensity a little bit more from the warm-up. And so your movements should have a deeper range of motion. I don't like to see jumping around still in that pre-cardio phase, but I like to see deeper range of motion, bending the knees more, using movements that take up a lot of space on the floor, using the arm patterning. So maybe you're going to something that's a little more complicated in terms of the actual moves themselves from what you did in the warm-up phase. So using that pre-cardio is just a few minutes, but remember your students or the participants in your class, they love to be educated. They love that the instructor is giving them great information that will make their workout even better. So this is your chance to explain why we're doing pre-cardio and how that's going to make the rest of their workout even more successful for them. Then we're going to move into our cardio phase. You know, that's when my RPE should be up. It should be like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, depending on what type of cardio we're doing. I want to feel that peak. I want to feel that intensity rising for sure. And then we go into our cardio recovery. So just, I want to feel the difference in the movement patterns. I want to hear you coach and educate us on why we're in these different phases. So you're also managing the expectations of your participants so they know how hard they should be pushing themselves at any phase of the workout. So doing that coaching, again, options and modifications. So here's where you get into that cardio section. You can be adding jumping. You could be adding, you know, more speed. You might be doing interval training with a timer. You have so many different options, but you have to make sure everybody feels successful in the class. So I always try to teach the base move, and then I add on those progressions to make things harder. And I don't have to do the highest level when I'm teaching, and you as the instructor candidate, you don't have to do the highest level intensity movement. You can show it just for a few seconds and then bring it back down, bring that intensity back down. Remember, this is not your workout. You're facilitating the workout of your participants. So maybe if it's your own workout, you'd be going crazy and doing the highest level intensity, jumping around, but not everybody in your class is going to be able to hit that level. So you want to make sure you show those options so that people who want the challenge can go for it, but that you make everybody else feel successful and that they're taken care of by having those different options available. So giving lots of options and modifications, and especially if you're getting into something that's a little more choreographed, complicated kind of movements, you want to make sure that if you're doing a grapevine, you could just do a step touch or a two-step touch. It's lots of different ways that you can transition movements to make them much more simpler. If some people can't go down on the floor to do that burpee, you know, having them just doing a squat and a reach up, maybe that's a different option. You can really work with your pro trainer if you have questions about what kind of options you can give for different movements. Sometimes you might have a pregnant participant in your class, and maybe they shouldn't be getting down on the floor based on where they are in their pregnancy. And you may not know that, right? It's like, you don't know who's in your class. And obviously if you picked your participants for your exam class, you should know who they are and what their health background is. But just going forward as an instructor, you don't necessarily know the backgrounds of everybody in your class, what injuries or illnesses people are recovering from. So you want to make sure you're multi-level teaching all the time to set everybody up for success. And that's when you're going to create those raving fans who love your programs and are constantly coming to your class because they feel like they got an awesome workout and they felt successful in your class. And that's the creativity and variety. So making sure you're doing your movements in multi-planes of direction, you're moving around the floor, you're not just staying in the same plane of motion. I had one student before just doing jumping jacks and then high knees and then butt kick running. And it was all in that one place in the floor. We didn't move side to side, front to back, diagonal. There's so many options to make movements more creative. So, and we want that you're marked on using multi-plane and multi-directional movements. So making sure that you add those in there to create that interest in the movements. And then your transitions. How are you flowing from one movement to the other? If it's not, you know, a 32 count combination, obviously those we want to see nicely flow from one to the other, but you don't have to be doing that kind of musicality program for your exam. So how are you moving from one drill to the next, or one hit interval to the next, one tabata to the next? How are you coaching? It could be just about how you're explaining things and how you choose maybe your movements all to be standing up and then all to be on the ground for your, you know, plank drills, like your mountain climbers, your plank jacks, all those kinds of things. But maybe you're not up and down. Like you have to find the flow that works for you, that's not disruptive. Because the worst thing is when you're in your cardio and then it takes you a while to set up the next exercise and their heart rate is going down. So you want to make sure that if you are setting them up from one drill to the next, that you keep them moving, walking, jogging, jumping jacks, something on the spot while you're explaining the next thing. Just really limit the downtime, because they're there to work, and unless it's a recovery period, you want to make sure that you have them doing some kind of activity while you're transitioning to the next drill or explaining it. Ron, got anything to add to the cardio?
Nothing to really add, but to emphasize multi-level, 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 multi-level. Even though I have a lot, sometimes you have the instructors who are teaching at a higher intense classes for, you know, the more fit people, whatever the class, it could be a registered program, things to this effect. But I always let them know that, sure, they may, you know, they may have a higher fitness level, but what if they're injured? What if they are pregnant? What if there is something that doesn't allow them? So the things I always remind them of is think of either being injured or, you know, again, being pregnant, and going to the floor and then standing up, and then down to the floor and standing up. You know, people who have injuries, you know, older adults, that down and up movement isn't fun for a lot of people. Those people who are more fit, getting down and get up is no problem. But when you do your programming and you're planning your class, especially your cardio, if you think about that and you talk about it during this exam component, it shows us that you understand how to create the options and modifications. You're being very creative, again, with making sure that they are reaching the zones that they need to be in, or getting their RPE, because again, a lot of classes is going to be from, you know, 16 up to, you know, 68, 69, 70, even higher. So how are you going to handle all of those in the cardio training itself? So multi-level, multi-level, multi-level.
I love it. So true. Okay, here's an example. Let's make it really practical. Mountain climbers. You're in plank position, you're going crazy. Options, you could just gently bring in one knee or the other, or just hold plank. Now, as the instructor, when I'm down on the floor doing mountain climbers, I can't really see what my class is doing. They might be dying. Someone could be in distress. I might need to address that from a first aid perspective. So I give the option, if you don't want to go down to the floor to do mountain climbers, stay with me. I'm going to stand up and do high knees instead. So I'm not in a plank position, but that way my eyes are on the participants. And as the instructor, again, you're facilitating their workout. It's not your workout. Do mountain climbers on your own time. But for the folks in your class, you might want to stand up just so that you can see how everybody's doing. You can motivate. You can encourage. Great job, Ron. Keep it up. Just 5 more seconds. You got this. And that's what I want to see from you as an instructor, so that you are giving those multi-level. And there are going to be some people who need to stand up and do high knees instead of a plank position mountain climber. Let's move on to muscle conditioning. Ron.
I hate mountain climbers. I hate them. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say. Muscle conditioning. So when it comes to that for your exam, again, we're looking for a well-balanced muscle strength conditioning component. Again, if the bulk of your class is going to be focused on cardio, we still need to see the muscular strength conditioning. Now, always touch base with the pro trainer. If you're coming to, for example, for me, I have a space where I can run my practicals. So my participants, or the people right doing their exams, they always touch base with me. What equipment do I have? What can I use? What don't I have? Because if you go into the space and realize, oh, we have nothing but a mat, then all these wonderful ideas of shoulder press and doing, chest press with weights is gone, because you have to do body weight. it becomes very frustrating and very upsetting. All of a sudden now you got to think on your feet and change it. So check with the pro trainer, make sure, if you're coming to the pro trainer, make sure you know exactly what equipment you have. And then vice versa, if we're pro trainers going to you, you should know exactly what equipment. We're always looking for well balanced, which means upper body, lower body. We're looking for some type of a core workout. Now, we know as fitness professionals, doing crunches to the cows come home isn't the best way to work our core. So during your live class or live course, pardon me, you probably would have gone over some different exercises. Even as fitness professionals, fitness people, we know crunches aren't the end all be all. So being that little creativity with some core, but you're also working the anterior and posterior of the body, which is the front and the back of the body. So we're not looking for every single major muscle group. We're looking for a couple of the big ones, because again, this might be a shorter segment in it. If it's not, then we're looking for, again, that creativity in the strength conditioning, body weight. We're looking for equipment if you have it, which I always like to see, because again, you might be teaching a cardio dance class, but in 5 years, you might be now teaching more boot camp. So this is kind of an opportunity for us to help you and guide you in making sure that it's balanced. Technique is so critical as the instructor. You need to be able to demonstrate perfect alignment, because remember, your participant's only going to do probably 75 to 80% of the technique that you're talking about. So a lot of times when I'm setting people up in my classes, I'm doing the exaggerated shoulder roll, and I'm doing the lifting and pulling back. I'm doing all these very animated movement patterns. When I'm doing, for example, a bicep curl, I'm going to go slightly on an angle, show that my elbow's tucked in, chest is lifted, talking about the range and why the range is so important. Talking about appropriate weight, right? You need to make sure that whatever weight, if it is weighted, is how much should they be lifting? Because again, what tends to happen in group exercise, which I've found very consistent, is that we always grab the 2.5 pounds, the little 5 pounds, and your bicep curl. Well, I know as a bicep, you can lift more than 2.5 pounds. So again, being able to talk about these kind of things and having not 12 different types of equipment out, having only 2, maybe 3 at the most if possible. That way you can utilize it. So that means your programming needs to see that. Modifications and options, right? So when it comes to actually, can they do a shoulder press? Can they do a push-up? How do you modify that push-up? But again, okay, I hate push-ups. I know they're fantastic. I know they're great and all that. I hate push-ups with a passion. But I talk about it in a way, why? So the philosophy I've always talked about is, remember the lady who's fallen and I can't get up? Remember that? She's back. I've seen the commercial. And I tell my participants, that woman cannot do one push-up. So in my class, I am preparing you that if you happen to fall, you are actually able to push yourself up. So it is such an important movement, but I talk about the options. How can you do it? Some people can't go down. Wall push-ups, I'm happy with that as long as you do it correctly, which means my demonstration has to be perfect. I don't do all the push-ups. I don't do all the mountain climbers. I will do it, demonstrate it, and then I coach and cue people as they're doing it. I can watch and observe. So as long as my demonstration is nice and clean and I talk about my 3 points of a setup, then as they're doing it, I can encourage them. I can make sure they're doing it correctly. Making sure the equipment, again, is appropriate for the exercise itself. Beth?
I love it. Ron brings up a really important point, which is we should be coaching and cueing our participants based on everyday life function of our bodies. So I've fallen and can't get up, push up is a lovely example of just really making it real life for people, make it functional. So I want to bring in the idea, a little more advanced instructor technique. When I see my instructor candidate doing a walk around, so they've set up the strength move, they've they're coaching and cueing constantly on form and technique, options, modifications. Now they're going to walk around a little bit during that set to possibly, with permission, adjust physically if somebody needs, obviously get permission from the student first, to put your hands on their body. But participants really like when the instructor walks around and they feel like they need to perform a little bit better, or push a little bit harder when the instructor's walking around. Now, it's not required, but it definitely shows your confidence. So if you start to build that ability to walk around and coach people individually or support them in their technique, they really appreciate it. They want to know. They can't see themselves necessarily in the mirror to adjust. There may not be a mirror in the studio. They can't see and hear, how to adjust their body. So to have the instructor give them that technique, even just verbally, will help them a lot, and they'll appreciate it. So that's a more advanced instructor technique. And again, you're not marked specifically on that point, but it shows confidence and it shows leadership. So it might be something that you start to bring in, because again, if you're doing push-ups, you're not watching your participants. If you're doing the full out push-ups, like Ron said, show a few, show the options, get them going. And one other point I want to make here, I always share with my students, you don't need to take 5 minutes to show them how to do a squat or a lunge or a push-up. Most people know. You get going. I wish you could see my body, but you get going. You start doing your squats. Okay, everybody, let's get into hip width position and let's squat down for 2, up for 2. Okay, remember to keep your weight in your heels. Okay, make sure that we're inhaling on the way down and exhaling on the way up. Great job. Okay, we can start to bring in that bicep curl now. But if you sit there and they're standing around and you explain how to do a squat for 5 minutes, their heart rate's going down. It's kind of a waste. They don't need to sit there and watch you doing it. So you just get them going, and then start your coaching and cueing and educating while they're doing it with you. What would you say to that, Ron?
Oh, totally. There's so many times. You find most people in group exercise, they hate standing around and waiting, even though the information you're giving them might be important, or it is important. That's why you're doing it. But the challenge is they're only going to hear 3 seconds of what you've said in a 1-minute explanation. We know how to squat. We know what a squat is. It's your job as the instructor to get them moving and then coach and cue and correct them as they're doing it. And I think that's what makes us such a unique group of fitness leaders, is that as you do this more and more, you're able to explain exercise movement in a way that everybody understands. So, I was, group exercise first for so many years before I became a personal trainer. But the way I explain things, I can use that in my personal training. So when I train someone, I don't actually need to touch them. I can actually verbally explain that to them and they get it. So we're in a very unique position that our explanations and our the way that we describe a movement and why we do it and how we do it and what you need to feel, we do it with passion. We do it with excitement, not in a boring way, but that excitement because you have music going and we want to do it. I'm very animated. I realize that my eyes are getting bigger as I talk about this. But I think we are so in a unique position that we are the motivators. We have so much fun with that. And this is the time, muscle conditioning, we don't do enough of it, in everyday life to prepare for everyday life. So I just derailed the whole conversation. So I'm done, Beth.
I know. You can tell Ron and I are very passionate. And when we get together, it just feeds off of each other. So we have about 12 minutes left or so. So I want to make sure we get to all the points because we could go on and on. All right, so your cool down and finishing the class. So again, obviously you're stretching the muscles that you worked in class. If you did squats, I want to see a glute stretch. I want to see a hamstring stretch. I want to see a quadricep stretch, those kinds of things. Educate, constantly educate, even in the cool down. You are educating. Here's the stretch we're doing because we did so many squats. Here's the stretch we're doing for our shoulder because we did all those lateral raises. So you're educating them as to what muscles they're stretching and why it's important to stretch it. We want to hold our stretches for at least 20 seconds. So don't rush through, take your time. And if you're comfortable, get them into some, calming breath work, maybe a little meditation at the end. It's up to you, as long as you get those stretches in there. And then finishing your class. So you are given marks for congratulating your class on a job well done, to announce that you're going to be staying after to take feedback and take questions. This makes you a really open, accessible instructor, and people need to feel comfortable with you, that they could share, questions and feedback with you, and you're going to learn from it. You want that feedback so that you can improve yourself for the next class. And then you're inviting folks to the class that you're teaching next. So I always like to do that. Okay, thanks so much for coming to my cardio sculpt circuit today. Don't forget Friday, I am teaching Zumba. Would love to see you there. Now, people who prefer, circuit training, maybe they're not as interested in Zumba, but they're going to come because they liked my style of class. They liked how I made them feel. And now they're going to open themselves up to a new class. So by announcing what you're teaching next, you're going to develop your fan base. You're going to develop your regulars, which feels good as an instructor to see those folks in your classes week after week. And they're going to start to cross-train with you. And that's a benefit to you and to them. All right, let's move on to teaching ability and leadership. So Ron, do you want to start off here?
So with that, the education's the why. Why are we doing these things? What's important? When you understand the whys, you're able to educate your participants in the movement pattern and how it's going to be important to them in everyday movement. When you're facing the participants is so critical. Back in the day, we had mirrors in every studio, and I taught facing the mirrors and never taught facing the group when I first started, because it's easier. Turning and facing the group, you're able to see every participant for safety. The energy in the room is so much different. It's so much higher. They can see your faces, then they know you're watching them. The musicality and the music choice. So again, I always talk about making sure that the music's appropriate. So I say with the fitness music itself, it's already broken down into the 32 count phrases. That's already, beats per minute. So I use those and it's appropriate for my classes, because you also want to be conscious of that. Beats per minute, is it appropriate for the class you're teaching? And again, in the manual, in the courses, we go through that quite heavily. So making sure that it is appropriate for that group. Connecting with participants, knowing their names, knowing who they are. You're there early anyways, setting up. So this is the time when you get to meet them and talk with them. After class, getting to know them, understanding the whys they're there. Maybe there's things you can do in your class to help them reach their goals that they've come for. Your technique and form is so critical. It's so important. This is the part that I always mention, that you want to make sure that you do a quick video of yourself doing a push-up, doing that. How do I look? Am I showing and demonstrating what's important? And once you do that, you're going to show the confidence, right? When you take the time to have fun, the confidence does come out. If you're so focused on everything else, the confidence isn't quite there. But when you relax and say, you know what? I love this and I want them to have fun, the confidence always shines.
So true. I always enjoy taking a class of someone who's very obviously enjoying what they're doing. They're having fun teaching my class. And I love that. It absolutely shows that enthusiasm and confidence. So if you can get to the point where you're having fun, I know it's stressful. You are being evaluated, and that is stressful, and that causes anxiety. You want to be successful. You need 80% on this exam, but try to have fun and let that confidence and enthusiasm show through. And I guarantee you'll feel a lot better, and your participants will have a way better time in your class too. All right, just a few tips about practicing, sharing, and getting feedback. So you've got to memorize your program. You should memorize your visual and verbal cues, when you're going to be pointing in certain directions, when you're using other non-verbal cues, when you're using body language. You want to practice all of that and know when you're bringing each of those pieces in. I always recommend that you write out your talking points, and there's a place on the lesson plan to do that, or you might want to create your own notes. And those talking points ensure that you're going to hit all the marks on the marking rubric. So really review that marking evaluation form and know how many marks you're getting for each section, so you are ensuring that you're educating and coaching. There's a lot to say in this exam. It's not just the exercises you choose and how well you do them. It's what you're talking about too. So pay attention to that evaluation form, know what you need to say when, memorize all of that. Now, mentorship. This is super important to get that on the floor teaching experience. CanFitPro recommends that you get 20 hours of on the floor teaching experience somehow, whether you're, team teaching with another instructor, you are just teaching to your family and friends, something that you are actually practicing more than just by yourself at home, even more than just videoing yourself. You need to actually see what it's like with real people. So make sure you find that mentor at your local gym. Talk to your pro trainer, see if they can help you. I always like to have my students teach first. They teach the flexibility component of my classes in my community, and then I give them feedback, and I get them to go and do the warm up next, or maybe do a cardio drill during my class that I'm teaching to my local gym. And then that way they get that on the floor experience, and it's a super value add to them because I can give them feedback. But you don't have to do that with a pro trainer. You can do that with any instructor in your local community, your gym. So if you can't get to on the floor training, making sure you're videoing yourself. Do you want to talk a little bit about the videoing, Ron?
The videoing is actually a very critical component, and it's, I think, the hardest thing to do. And we just need to push through that one, not to sound negative, but when you videotape yourself, you actually see what you look like. So it's great. What I recommend is videotape like your warm up, and then follow it, and then put it on and follow it. Can you do it? Are you getting the points? And then I say, after you're comfortable, share it with somebody. Tell them, here's my warm up. Do it. Give me some feedback on that one. Did it work? How did you feel? Asking these follow-up questions. So video is I think, really, really important. And it's so easy to do. It's so simple. Before, back in the day, however many decades ago, we had the big, huge monster camera that we had to set up and book and pay. Get out your phone, do a quick video, and then watch yourself, listen to yourself, and then get someone else to do it. It's one of those really important things.
Absolutely, yeah. So just do that video. That's going to help you. That's something you can absolutely be doing right now. All right, what about getting by with a little help from your friends, Ron?
Well, when you started this journey, you've already had a cheering section. They're there to help you. They want to help you. They want to be part of your next adventure in life. So this is the time to tap into it. So talking to your network, let them know you're preparing, getting this part with your friends, getting them on board to help you with it, teaching to them. So when you put together your class, teach the class to them, then get the feedback. How is my coaching? Was I able to explain the exercises? How do they make you feel? These kind of things, get them on board right away so that the number of times you've taught to them, you're almost getting them ready for the exam too when you bring them all into as your participants. Because again, we need a minimum of 4 people. So if you teach them a couple of times, at least then they're used to kind of what's going on. They know what's happening. Your friends and family, again, not just, the people in your household, your spouse, your partner, whoever it may be, they're going to be there with you. And it's quite ironic when I talked to them afterwards and I said, so how many times have you heard that song? And they roll their eyes going, it's the same song over. And you're, as the fitness instructor going through your exam, get that music, know that music inside and out. And once you know it inside and out, it's going to rock awesome. The participants in your class. So who did you take the class with? That I find is going to be the biggest one, especially for out-of-towners who sometimes find it a bit challenging sometimes to get more people into the class. Again, everyone in the class that you took your live course with, they're there to help you, and they're typically more than happy to jump in and help and give feedback so that when they have to do theirs also, you're available to help them out. Connect on Facebook, connect, however you can, and talk about what you've learned. How are you getting through this component? What did you add in? Sometimes hearing it from different people, it's like, oh, the light bulbs are going off. I get it now. Beth?
Yes, that brings me over to a few little watch outs. So do pick your practical exam participants, the minimum of 4 people, with care. I have had students before attempt their exam with participants who are friends and family who weren't really taking it seriously. And then the class was a bit of a train wreck, and it was hard for the student to recover from that. They were laughing at her. Because they couldn't do the exercises, so they were kind of laughing at themselves and being sort of foolish. They weren't taking it serious, and it made the class really difficult for the instructor and for the other participants who were there too. So make sure that you got their support. That's a rare occasion, honestly, but it has happened for me. So you want to make sure that you have good folks in your class. And that's why, Ron, I absolutely agree with, who was in your live course. Can you tap into each other to support? You know that they're going to smile and bring you the energy when you're up at the front of the room during your practical exam. So you want to choose those people with care. And just a couple other watch outs. There are certain marks that people never seem to get. For example, rate of perceived exertion. We ask for it during the warm-up. We ask for it during the cardio muscle conditioning phase. And a lot of people don't remember to include rate of perceived exertion. How hard should your participants be working at any phase? So make sure you bring that in. Options and modifications, we can't stress that enough. Oftentimes people do not get marks because they have not given enough options or modifications throughout the whole exam class. And there's one other mark that I find folks often don't get, and it's the being able to advise on a technique change and then commending when that change has been done. So we don't want to necessarily center somebody out because it can make them feel self-conscious and never come back to your class. So a good way to cover that off is to say to the whole group, hey everyone, I want to see that posture really strong and engage your core. Well done. I see everybody just pulled up and their stomachs came in and you look so strong. So you're demonstrating that movement, and that's going to get you those marks because I'm hearing you coach a technique change and then you're commending to the group that they've actually done what you've said. And that does take more practice. Really from the beginning of your practice of putting together your practical exam, start bringing that cue in so that you can easily cover it off during your exam. Ron, do you have any other watch outs really quick since we're at about noon? We have a few more slides.
Yes, and I realize, yeah, we are pretty close there. So I would say the three big ones that I always say, start and end on time, because also we're preparing you for real life. So if there's a class before or after you need to make sure you start and end on time. So when you start the class, make sure you end on time. Add water breaks, book it into your programming. Make sure you take water breaks and have the participants know that they can take it whenever they want, but actually demonstrating that I think is really important. And no matter what is happening during your exam, if something doesn't work and it becomes a train wreck, don't stop moving. Keep going. If something isn't working, try to avoid the meltdown, because then we have to try to figure out, we got to have a conversation. If it's not working, it's okay. Keep moving, move on to the next component. It's all good. But we're also looking for you to help you in real life. And trust me, I've had times when stuff hasn't worked and it's a train wreck and I have to pull it together. And that's what we want to see. How can you keep going?
Awesome. All right, find that identity. You already are a successful fitness instructor. Be that person right now. And here's a great quote that I love. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Bring that compassion for others. Bring that passion for fitness to your students in your class, your participants. Visualize your success in helping others achieve their fitness goals, and really bring that attitude to your practical exam. I know it's going to build your confidence if you can already see yourself being successful at this. So really work on that mental framework. You have got this, my friend. You just take the time and go through the motions of your preparation. The more you prepare, the better that exam is going to go for you. So take your time to prepare, work with your mentor, work with your pro trainer, work with friends and family, and you absolutely are going to be successful in your fitness instructor specialist practical exam. And just to cover off, as we are moving through the uncertainty of COVID-19, we want to make sure that we are very aware of the uncertainty that the global pandemic is causing. We want to make sure that you're safe, you're healthy, and that you are just aware that we are really holding your certification journey at the highest level of care for you, so that you make it through on the right timelines for yourself, and that you can be successful when it's safe to come back together and take your practical exam in a live environment. So again, CanFitPro will be communicating with you via email when it is time to book your practical exam, when it's safe to do so. So no need to do any reaching out until you start to hear from us on how to reschedule if it was canceled, or if you're somebody who hasn't scheduled one yet, but you're just preparing, please know that you have this time right now, maybe a little extra time, to get yourself ready for your practical exam. And there's plenty you can be doing at home without the use of a live studio. So making sure that you are staying at home and staying safe. So from there, I want to thank you very much for coming today, for being engaged in the presentation, and I hope it gave you lots of ideas of how to prepare. If there's any questions at all, please feel free to add them into the chat at this point if you haven't already, and I'll ask Barb if there's any that we should cover off. But if not, we will probably leave it there. So I'll just keep it open for another minute or two and see if there's any more questions. Okay, so no questions from the group, so we'll leave it there. Again, thank you so much for being here, and stay safe, stay active, stay healthy. Bye.